Yeah, welcome back to this video. This is a continuation of the C# beginner series. If you are new here, kindly subscribe and click on the notification bell so that you are updated on when new videos are dropped. Previously in this series, we looked at classes in C#. If you have not watched that, I do encourage us to do so. In this video, as I've said, we'll be looking at classes and objects in C#. A class in C# is a blueprint for creating objects. On the other side, we have that an object is the actual implementation of that said class. Now, let's use the illustration of a building plan. When you have a building plan, that is just a design. It is not the same as the building itself. Meaning that we build the actual building itself with the help of the template, which is the blueprint. But the blueprint or the template itself, the plan of the house, is not in itself a building. You can't live within that template. You can't live within that particular plan, but you can live within the house when it is built. So the class just defines, like how a plan, the bounds, for example, of the house. It defines the how many story buildings you want. It defines many things within it. That's what the plan does. But the actual implementation of those plans or that particular plan is the building. In the same way, the plan in programming is actually just a class, whereas the building is what we call the object. It's actually the tangible thing, which is the object, or in our example here, a building. So this means that you only have one class, but you can have multiple objects created from the class. So you do not need to have multiple. So for example, if I have a building and I have a particular plan for that building, and I've built one building from that particular plan, if I want to build that same house, I do not need to go and create a new plan. I could use that same plan or architectural design to build multiple buildings all around different locations, just with the same plan. So, but we only have one plan, and then we have multiple buildings. In the same way, in C#, we have one particular class, but we can, from that one class, have multiple objects. So let's look at that. Let's look at how and what an object is really in C#. So if you remember from our previous video, we had this particular car class created. So where we had the specifications for the characteristics and the expected behaviors under certain situations. For example, when you want to increase the speed or you want to reduce the speed. So that is there. Now, how we can actually make use of this template to actually build the house, if we are to use the example of building a house, is by using the new keyword in C#. So that is just, let's say you want a Bugatti, for example. That's going to be new car, for example. This is how you create from that template of car, you create a particular object. So Bugatti here, this variable here, is just an object, whereas this car here, this particular class car, is just the blueprint. It is the class itself. Bugatti is an object based off of the car class. So I could have multiple of this. For example, I could have what other car? BMW. We could have new car. We could have a trailer. Let's call it a trailer. And we have, and you see, it has no problem with this. So you could have multiple objects based off the same class, but you don't usually have the same class over and over. So you can't come and say, okay, this particular class, so if I copy, I can't come and say, okay, sorry, I want to have another class of car. No, you can't have that. It will not, you see, it's complaining about that. You can't have the car class again. So let me just clean that up so that the error goes. So, but we could have many and several objects of the same class. Very important to note. And this, as I've said, is how we create our objects in C#. Now, let's imagine that this car let's have another constructor rather. So this particular car constructor, we want to pass it in the speed, and we want it, so we now say in our constructor that the initial speed should be whatever is passed into this constructor. So what that will mean is, let's say I want a slow car, for example. I can now say that when I'm creating this particular car, there are two options. Either we use the default, which set the speed to 50, or a car that could have the speed could be set by, or we could set the speed from our constructor based on whatever is passed into the car. So for example, here I could say 0, and what this does is it will go and it will create this particular car called slow car, this object of the car, using this particular constructor that takes in an integer. So it takes an integer and it knows, okay, since it's an integer, then it's going to set the speed to 0. Now, if I were to show us this, so let's just have, let me console.writeline this for us so that we see. So let's console log let's say have the Bugatti, for example, the speed of the Bugatti, and let's have that of the slow car, so that we can see how the constructor here affects both of them. So let me just put that Bugatti so that it's clear, and then let's have here slow car. So if we run this now and we see our output based off of this, we'll find out that the Bugatti has 50. Okay, I didn't put space there between the Bugatti and the 50. So Bugatti, as we see here, has a speed of 50, but the slow car has a speed of 0. That is because at the constructor, I had passed in 0 for this particular car, meaning that it will now go into the constructor and says what constructor aligns with the one that takes in an integer, and it comes in and says, oh, I have a constructor that passes in an integer, and when I give it that integer, it will go there and say speed should be set to whatever is that integer value that is passed. So let me just put space here, and that is basically just how we create our objects. So for example, on this object now, let's say I want to increase the speed of my slow car. So if I come to slow car and I say throttle, and I say, okay, I want to increase the speed by 40, for example. If I come back here, let me copy this and paste it here, and I run this again now, we'll see that initially the speed was 0, the speed of slow car was 0. But when we told it that you want to throttle, that means you are trying to you want to have a particular behavior, you want to perform a particular action, a particular task. You see that slow car, the speed for slow car now is 40. And that is basically what this is. You see, you will notice that I'm using these dots. This dot is how you get access to properties or methods in a particular class. So you see that we have this car class called car, and within it we have this property called speed. So if I want to make use of or access or make use or do whatever I want to do with that particular speed, I just need to make use of the dots on that particular object. So Bugatti is an object created from the car, so I could access anything inside this car, for example speed, with the dots. So if I come here now and I do Bugatti or let me use another one here, let's say PWM, and I do dots, you will see even Visual Studio helps me with some of this. You see, it tells me that it's what we call throttle. I have a throttle. Okay, let me go back there again. So you see that it has the brake. It has now equals comes with every particular class that we create. That we have 3 of them. We have equals, we have toString, and we have the get hash codes. Okay, sorry, we have 4 of them. Sorry, we have the get type too. So toString, get type, get hash code, all come with any class that we create. So that's very important to note. So apart from those, the other things are what we ourselves we declare. For example, the throttle, the brake, and the speed. Those are the 3 items we created. The speed was a property, whereas the brake and throttle are method. And if you look at the icon here, you will see these boxes here. They just to show that it's a method. Where you see something like a spanner here is to show that it's a property. That's just a nice way Visual Studio uses to visualizes it for us, to help us to know just by looking at it whether it's a property or it's a method. So that's how you assess the methods or properties within a particular class when using an object. And we have seen here how we made use of this property, this particular method or function to actually perform a particular task, which is to increment the speed of the particular car we are using here, which is the slow car. So in this video, I've just tried to show us what the class is and what objects are and how the objects differ from the class. I hope this was clear. In case you do have questions or you need clarification on some things, please drop it in the comment section and I will respond. Thank you, and I'll see us in the next video.